Hello, everybody, and welcome to the instant reaction to Everton getting deducted 10 points by the Premier League. Wow. Can you believe it? Shock news this Friday afternoon. Joining me to go through it all are Les Roberts, Keith Tomlin, Dave Downey, Matt Lusk, who will be joining us shortly. I'm assuming Matt's just trying to take deep breaths in and out before he comes on the podcast. Don't want to be doing too much editing or saying anything libelous, but I mean, huge news. Like I said, I think Dave, this had kind of gone under the radar a little bit. Focus on the team and the stadium, and everything seemed to be looking up. And then there you are, Friday afternoon. Just everyone's getting ready for a weekend away from Everton. Slap 10 points. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it is like you said there, or hinted at, Matt, that it feels like this has been something that's coming for a long time, something that we've tread the water with for quite some time. And the first thing that most people who talk about it go to is, oh yeah, what about Man City? 115 sanctions that should go against them. And I think many of us saw an issue coming towards us, given a lot of people associated it with this is an easy target here, Everton, something like this. They're not an elite club. They're not, I mean, I have no idea how you do that financially or legally, compare what we've done and what's going on with us compared to what's going on with Manchester City. It's pretty obvious. 115 sanctions should be hit a hell of a lot harder than just the one we've received here with 10 points. But I dare to say it, and I mean, dare I say this so early in what we're discussing here. The league tables would have been moved, hasn't it? We've been put down to 18th, isn't it? Or was it 19th?
So we're 19th on 4 points, and we're 4 points behind Bournemouth. Is it? Who are in 17th?
Yeah, no, Luton have gone up one, haven't they, to just out.
Okay.
So they're on to 17th, and we're 4 behind them. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We'll be dead easily stay up and all that, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will.
Nobody else is that confident, are they?
I think we will, yeah. But
I think right once you take out potential appeals, like a points reduction on the deduction, whatever, I think this is probably the ideal season for it to have happened. Because if this had happened either of the last 2 years, we'd have been gone without a trace. As it is, with the teams around us, we could legitimately be back out of the relegation zone by next Sunday night.
Yeah,
that's a really interesting point to me. Yeah,
it feels like a cataclysmic sort of thing. Obviously, it's the biggest ever points deduction in Premier League history, the biggest sanction in Premier League history in what been going for 30 odd years now, and still it shouldn't really affect Everton's season goals this season, which are competitive in the League Cup and finish lower mid-table and stabilise the club. So there's no reason why this penalty will stop Everton achieving their aims for this season.
We'll win the League Cup and they'll take off us.
No, there's a I think it is, as I said at the start there, the emotional side of it. I think there's a sensible approach there, what Keith just said. Like, you know, if you think this was last season and who were we battling with then, say Leeds and Leicester, was it? Last season, if it was this season, you'd be a hell of a lot more scared that we're going to go. And look, you can't become complacent with this, but you look at this table now and what, 2 points off 17th. We've been in worse conditions than that in the last few seasons and still managed to stay up. So it depends what way you look at it in that regard. I think the more prominent stuff, aside from relegation being at the top of that list, is the way in which this has come about. What now comes about the financial side of things as well. Is it just the one sanction that goes against us? Is there other stuff to come yet? Also the Premier League. I mean, that's showing preference to one side than another because, like I said, everyone's banged on about what's going on with City. The 6 sides that wanted to bail the Premier League and go into the Super League they were going to create, absolutely nothing has gone towards them. So I think there's other clubs as well who might well get this sort of thing thrown at them. It sets a precedent with ourselves, with the side that it's got. And like Keith said there, with the biggest the most amount of clubs that have been taken away from a club that have been deducted. That's Everton setting a precedent now. So, there are other clubs in that league, as we know, as we hear about, who do similar sorts of things, who'll have financial issues, who spend too much money, and other things that we don't even know about. They'll surely get this sort of thing thrown at them as well. So I think it's a big wake-up call for people who aren't just not Evertonians, and even people in and around who want it to happen. Like, you get Liverpool fans taking the piss and everybody else taking the piss who hate us. But I'd be doing all that with caution in mind, because I don't think this is going to be the last thing you're going to see now. Yes, people will say, well, it's because it's the easy target. Everton are going to be really easy to be the side that we throw something as hard as we possibly can at. But if that's very much the case, which it seems most people would say, then surely you'd be looking around your back right now, wouldn't you? Thinking then, well, if that happens to Everton, then it could certainly happen to us.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with that to an extent, in the fact that I can honestly see this being the one time this happens to a club. I can genuinely see that. I mean, just before you continue on that,
it's going to be the Umani ass of financial punishment.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
No, but Les, on that point you've just made there, I can see why you're saying that, because it's going to be a one-off thing because of what follows from it. But I just can't see that doesn't set an issue for when others come in, when others have this happen to them.
Well, the Premier League have made a rod for their own backs now, haven't they? Because
exactly right. Exactly.
They've got to apply this standard.
Yeah.
Or well,
they should do, but they
in
don't have
theory,
to.
they've got to. Yeah, but we do know how they like to twist in the wind, and how things can be sort of made easier, shall we say, for favoured clubs. And I think they'll say, oh yeah, the maximum punishable in this instance was 12 points, and we got a 10-point deduction. So when it comes to City, although the most they'll hit City with is a 12-point deduction, and they'll say, oh, we can't apply the same punishment for multiple counts. So City, effectively, 12 points to City is nothing. It's a month of their season.
I think this becomes a one-off, definitely, if the government rein in this whole legislation that they want to
the independent regulator stuff.
Oversee. Yeah, you want to be an
It's an excellent point, though. Yeah,
I think if that blows over now, I think this is a token gesture from the Premier League to say, look, we can keep our own house in order, because look at what these have done, and look at the big punishment we've given them. Now, Everton are not blameless in this. Let's not gloss over that point. The people running the club for the last 6 years in particular have been nothing short of disgraceful the way they've done it. The club should never be in this position. There were mitigating circumstances. COVID was a mitigating circumstance, which I think the club leveraged to its as much as it could. You can't discount the fact that the sponsor money got pulled when Usmanov got kicked out the country.
Yeah,
had the same happened to Chelsea, had Chelsea been in sort of with Abramovich that tightly at the same time, the same thing could have happened to them. Obviously, they got more revenue streams like the Champions League and that, but that was massive. That was huge for the club. And that seems to have been completely discounted, because I don't see how you can look at, the money may have been from, dodgy sources. Probably all Premier League money is. There's certainly a few clubs we know are from dodgy sources.
Yeah.
But, he was financing the club. He was sponsoring the club. It was all above board. So you can't discount the fact that a war breaks out. He gets kicked out the country. His assets frozen. That directly impacts Everton. No matter whether the machine's the figurehead of it, that directly affects the club. And it feels like none of that's been taken into account. And the only thing that I keep coming back to is the fact that they're terrified of someone else trying to put their house in order. Because you can imagine what a mess it is, sort of litigation-wise, finance-wise, with all these clubs. You look at, I don't want to go on about City, but you look at City, they've got 115 charges against them. They also happen to have the best lawyers in the world on their side. And the Premier League don't want to go near them, because they think it probably won't be worth it finance-wise, because they'll just kick it into the long grass year after year like they have been doing. But City have got those resources, and to that point, Everton are perfect for it. They know the club's on its arse. They've been working with the club for the past 2 years. So what does that say about their due diligence, that suddenly, even though the club have been transparent with the Premier League, when Benitez came in, he got 1.6 million, didn't he, for Damari Gray? Then in the January, when this had all kicked off, as far as I know, we signed Mikalenko and Patterson, and the Premier League were okay with that. And now suddenly, it's like, actually, no, you flouted the rules. It's your 10-point deduction. But that's the key thing for me. I think that they're terrified of getting that independent regulator in.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, keep going.
I think just to try and like keep things on a positive slant, and like obviously we don't want to. Well, some people might want to succumb to the anger and smash everything up and whatnot, but what we have to remember as well is this deduction does not affect what's happening on the pitch with the team at the moment, and they're playing some very like competent football and getting results.
It's surely going to have some, like it will have some impact though, won't it? Like this, like
do you think it's going to? I mean,
it could have a positive. It might have a positive impact. That's what it might be galvanizing. It might be demoralizing. I'm trying to think about what, if you're Luton or Bournemouth, and like how do you feel after this? You're probably thinking, it's looking like a bit of a lost cause, and all of a sudden we're down there. Like there's going to be a bit of a ripple effect, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean they're still going to be in the same position they were in anyway, because they were all going to be down there battling. It's just one more team in the mix. But I think again it ties into this is a good time. Like there's never a good time for it to happen, but this is a better time for it to happen, in that you've got a manager in there like Sean Dyche. You think how he's going to play into a siege mentality now for the next sort of. I mean, we've got 8 games in December plus United at the end of the month. Across that period, games there, you think how he's going to play into that and say, right, they want you gone. What are we going to do about it? I think he's the right man to have there at this point. Can you imagine it was Lampard still in charge? We've been given this deduction, and he's on giving one of his Lampardian response sound bites to it. So, I mean, if Everton keep playing the way they're playing, they're going to stay up.
Yeah, I think so.
There's no doubt in my mind.
At least Goodison will be better than it has. We've only won one fucking game there all season, haven't
we? 2, Dave. We won in the cup as well.
No, I'm counting the division where we've been deducted points, Matt.
Let's get Matt's so angry he's logged onto the call twice here. So I'm not sure what's going to happen.
We're double flusking, and that can really mean trouble for someone.
Both screens are on black and both are on mute. One's not on mute now, so I'm assuming that's going to. Matt, are you there?
Yeah, probably more now, isn't it?
Matt is there. I don't know how much of that you've heard, mate. We're still sort of giving our initial reaction to it all. How are you feeling?
I was angry before I started trying to get on this call, and now I am murderously furious. Mainly at this absolutely useless work laptop that I've got.
It's the way he's saying get on this call like he's on TalkSport or something, causing murder.
Honestly, trying to get on
606.
Jason Cundy's about to get slapped in the head.
Honestly, it's not for here, but just honest to God.
Simon Jordan.
The ball ache of trying to get a laptop replaced over the course of 3 years. It's just. But anyway, hello, lads.
Yeah, I mean, just. Apart from your laptop, how do you feel about Everton getting a 10-point deduction? I think that's why we're here mainly. Yeah.
Apart from that, Mrs. Kennedy, how was your trip to Dallas?
Well, yeah, like I said, I didn't hear the rest of you lads, but I can imagine you're all just as furious as I am, and yeah, the whole thing is just a mess. It's been a mess since they announced the charges. It's been bordering on unprofessional the way they've conducted it, and yeah, I'm sure we'll get into the finer points as we go through this, but yeah, the headline is just furious at the whole thing. Well, it's just how dare they? How dare they?
Well, I think Matt, from the people I've seen on Twitter, you've articulated some of this really well in regards to the finer points, and I've sort of looked at it as well. Everton have broken a rule that which is obviously still appealing, which probably do need to stress at this point. But in the Premier League's eyes at the moment, they have broken a rule, and with that in mind, they're liable to punishment. So what is it in particular about all this that's made you full of murderous anger, to use your own phrase?
Well, let's start at the beginning with the rule itself. The rule is written. Okay, the way the rule's written is all right. It's outdated. I mean, this is getting on for a decade old now, and it still says £105 million. that figure's never been adjusted. There's been no conversation about adjusting it. It's just been, there's been a whole global pandemic and a international conflict or two since then, and it's just not budged. So that's a problem in itself. And then when it comes to the actual way they enforce breaches of the rules, they've basically given themselves scope to do absolutely anything they want. And once again, they've just made no effort at all to try and codify it, say, this much or that over, then it's this kind of sanction. I mean, how can they expect clubs to comply with these things if they don't know what the actual punishment will be for not complying? Obviously, now they've got some idea because we've been absolutely, rat buggered by it. But I mean, it could have been a 20 grand fine. It could have been a 20-point deduction, but it wasn't written down. The EFL have actually written down their sanction process. And if you read the written reasons, the Premier League tried to submit a version of that as the way to calculate the sanction, which the commissioners just rejected out of hand, saying, well, you can't just establish this now. But then they just snapped their fingers and went 10 points. There was no real discussion at all about how they arrived at that, whether it was, say, 6 points plus 2 for each aggravating factor. Don't know. They just don't say. And 10 points, 1 point more than literally being insolvent. It just beggars belief. It really does beg a belief. I mean, what are we actually doing here? We spent years and years jumping through hoops for them, trying to comply. We may as well just gone into administration and saved ourselves the hassle.
Well, this is the thing. Just quickly on that, Dave. So this is the thing with the administration thing, right? Your club goes into administration, jobs are lost, people lose their jobs, and that is infinitely worse than what's happened at Everton. We didn't even furlough staff at Everton during COVID. And that, as you touched on, Matt, COVID is something that it was a mitigating factor. We probably overplayed it, but I imagine every club overplayed it because they're businesses and that's what they do. But it's absolutely pathetic that we get a bigger points deduction for a club who could save its own arse by getting rid of people who work there. And we're not talking multimillionaire footballers here. We're talking people who work like the ground staff or the people who work behind the scene who are on massive wages. And the club have been punished more heavy than if they'd have done that. And the whole thing just absolutely stinks. It's like no thought has been given into it at all. It's just like 10 points. It's completely arbitrary. It's not. You can't even divide it into wins or draws. It's a completely arbitrary points tally.
It's a nice round number, isn't it?
Yeah,
It looks threatening because it's double figures. And they've just plucked it from nowhere. And this whole process as well, just goes to show how much of a farce financial fair play is, because they seem to just make their own rules up as they go along rather than having it set out in, if you breach it, this is what will happen to you. The fact that up until 12 o'clock today, nobody knew what punishment Everton were possibly going to get. There wasn't like a list of it could be this, it could be this, it could be that. It's just been like they've just created one on the spot, haven't they?
It said in the handbook anything up to and including expulsion from the league. They gave themselves scope to do literally anything.
I just wanted to ask
burn Goodison Park to the ground.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just clarify there? Sorry, Dave, just before you go. The sanction, this whole commission thing, this whole sanction thing, this isn't a specific profits and sustainability hearing. This is just a generic commission under Premier League rules for a breach of a Premier League rule.
Yeah.
So this is the same kind of process that will go through if they'd signed an ineligible player, things like that. And again, the sanction scheme for all that stuff is generic and vague, up to and including expulsion from the league. So they need to set up a specific and transparent process for this very thing, like the EFL have done, because it doesn't make sense at all to have the same. Well, they're not judges, are they? I think one of them to judge, one of them's like a litigator for like tribunals and stuff like that. But the three people on the commission, how can they be judging like the finer points of financial arguments and stuff, and then also judging whether or not this lad that XFC have signed from Senegal really has an Italian passport? It makes no sense at all for it to be in the same regime and system.
It was just about I was about to ask you, Fluskin, I think you were making the best point about it there, or sort of what you were discussing about it yourself. Given that there's so much of an ambiguity into how they've solved this, or how they think they've solved it. So, given like in layman terms, at the start of all this, it went to an independent panel who suggest, is this right, that they suggest to the Premier League what the sanctions should be?
Yeah, but don't forget the Premier League also suggested to them that it should be 12 points.
So they've gone to an independent. It's quite ridiculous, isn't it? They've gone to an independent panel and said, "Listen, lads, I need you to sort this out for us, but we suggest that it should be this amount. What do you think?" And it's basically three fellas being able to say, "Yeah, that's about right, lads. Go for that," and sent it back. But generally, is that how it's worked? They've approached or made up an independent. Are they even a panel themselves, or they've been put together by the Premier League? Have they been asked by the Premier League?
The independent panel was Danny Murphy, Mark Lawrence, and Stephen Gerrard, I think.
Craig Pawson.
Craig Pawson on there, yeah.
Does anybody know the answer to what I've just said there?
No.
I've just asked.
I don't. I don't think there's been any scope for it in the past. I think this is a completely new situation that everyone's in. And just all I can say is it throws back to them just winging it.
Yeah. Do you not think now that the appeal thing, because this is it now, this is set in stone, isn't it, for the end of the season now? We can't appeal and it changes now, can we?
You know, I'm sure they'll get to work on City's 112 charges now and stick that appeal to the back of the queue.
No, but what I'm asking is, we can't have that deduction taken back. We can't get the points taken back, can we?
I think on appeal they can reduce the points deduction. Yeah, but I'm not 100% sure of that, but I am relatively sure.
Yeah, I'd be certain of that, because of how various things. If anyone's made an appeal for anything, really, they get some of it cut back, don't they?
Watch, City will get their 12-point deduction.
But the point I'm making is, if you're going to appeal to this, which Everton have said they're appealing to this, yeah, surely that has to happen really quickly in order for the amount of points or whatever it is. Maybe
it'll only be done, won't it? Like that'll only.
But it'd have to be really quick, Matt. It'd have to be done really quickly.
I think it'll be in already. Like I think the announcement of this news, they've probably known for a while, haven't they? Like,
no, I know that. I'm on about if they obviously Everton are going to appeal when they found this out much sooner than everybody else has before it's been released. They've gone, we're going to appeal with this. You giving us this amount of points off as a punishment. We're going to appeal to this. What I'm asking and saying effectively is, surely that has to happen quickly, whether the appeal is going to be successful or not, given the state of the Premier League and what other teams, like you look, Burnley down there or Sheffield United, thinking, hang on, how many points have we got to get here to get above a certain side and stay in the Premier League? Yeah. That decision has to be made soon, surely.
If you look at the kind of worms it can open, just as a hypothetical situation, Everton go down at the end of the season by 4 points.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. The CAS or some sort of independent tribunal, or like some fellas in The Hague or whatever, come back and say, nah, 10 points is too much. It should have been like 5 points.
Exactly. Yeah.
We get 5 points back and then stay up by a point. You think of the can of worms that's going to open. I had to properly scratch my brain there to remember how many points I said twice. It literally. But even going into, say, the last month of the season with an uncertainty on how many points Everton are going to get back or not get back, as the case may be, directly affects how teams will set up for matches. They'll have to go out to win rather than trying to draw games and stuff. So it has to be done and settled realistically, you would say, by the end of February. For like sporting integrity, shall we call it?
I'd say even sooner than that. I'd say it's got to be a matter of days rather than weeks, surely. And then the other thing that we haven't included in this is, didn't we still have the likes of Leeds and Leicester throwing in all sorts of accusations our way?
Well, that's what I was supposed to going to say now. Like, now in the eyes of the Premier League, that Everton have cheated to get points. Like, what does that mean for those clubs and what they can do? Like, can they take legal action now on the grounds that the competition they were in, like they have ruled themselves that Everton cheated effectively? Like,
how many points did we stay up by? How many points did we stay up by last season?
One, wasn't it? One or two.
Think, 1 or 2 points. So therefore, now we've been dock this lot, have Leeds and Leicester and whoever now got a case to say, hang on a minute, why hasn't this only been done now when, the sanctions was being spoken about more than a year ago, certainly more than when we went down last season. The fact you're only putting it in now, well, why can't we complain and say you should have done it back then because it means we would have stayed up? That's what they'll all be sat there thinking.
Okay, I've got the handbook open now. It doesn't put a time scale.
I think that's the first time those words have ever been uttered on the Blue Room.
Sat there in the library, isn't he?
I've got the handbook open now.
Oh no, I've been through all this chapter and verse. Don't worry, and it just says as soon as reasonably practicable, which is a very legalese phrase, which means whenever. It would have to be, like you say, within this season as soon as possible. And it depends on the grounds of the appeal and stuff like that, where it could be a procedural thing, it could be anything at all. One thing that's more interesting though is this is just a Premier League appeals process. There's also the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which Man City successfully went through against UEFA. And I noticed when I was looking at that a few weeks ago, one of the grounds that CAS dismissed all of that on City was the claim against City that they hadn't engaged with the investigation properly. And that's very similar to one of the things that's in our ruling now, saying that we didn't engage in good faith in terms of giving them around this stadium finance issue, giving them proper information. And they basically said we were trying to pull the wool over their eyes and that. And I think that will be a strong ground for CAS to say, well, no, they did because they've been working with you for years. And even besides that, this idea that we've given them financial records and audited accounts, independently audited accounts, and then they've said, oh, no, you're trying to cheat us there. Sorry, are you calling into question the integrity of the actual auditors as well? I mean, they've gone so far beyond any reasonable remit here. I know it's not a legal process as such. It's basically an arbitration. It's the same set of rules as, a HR complaint going to a employment tribunal, but they just the overreach is absolutely staggering. And I cannot see any way in which this will go through all the appeals processes. And I think as they go through it, they will, if it does drag on past the end of the season, they will have to. Sorry, I've just got an email from someone. I'm meant to be on a work call and imminently, so I'll have to something to update quickly.
Surely that's about Everton as well, though.
No, sorry, I lost the train of thought there. Yeah, so if it goes past the end of the season, they will have to impose, like an injunction thing to say you can't put the points deduction on immediately because obviously if it then comes back afterwards that it's no longer valid, you can't exactly reinstate us to the league and all that stuff. Yeah. But just the very last thing I was going to say before I do have to drop off about all the various mitigations and the claims that they've made against us and dismissed out of hand, things like, oh, inflation caused our stadium costs to go up, and they basically said, oh no, shit happens, I'm very sorry about that. It's just the language that they've written it in, it's just it seems to veer wildly from very detailed, finicky legalese language to well, never mind. And then at the end, and then at the end, they just almost like 10 points. Yeah, it just seems so inconsistent the way that they've done it, and you're gonna have to come back because I've lost my train of thought a bit and I need to reply to this email. But I'll stay on for another 5 minutes.
Mate, there'll be plenty of talk about this. Don't worry about that.
I'm going to shoot off as well now because I've got a lovely weekend in Bath on the Lash planned.
Oh, amazing!
So nice. Just one thing before I go, just to answer to who are the tribunal. Somebody's just shared a tweet in the replies to the Blue Room there. One of the panel is a former director at West Ham.
Okay.
So, I mean,
maybe it wasn't far off.
I know, yeah. I know.
Oh dear.
Well, that shows you the level at which these things are operating now.
I'm not sure if he was the butcher, the baker, or the candlestick maker, but
incredible.
We'll find out. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your rant, lads, and up the toffees.
Yeah, nice one.
United are absolutely getting it next week.
Yeah.
Got to be stay up the toffees now.
Nice one to Martin Keith for
see you later on, boys.
We'll do a little bit longer, lads. I put it as Keith sort of referred to there. I put a tweet out asking where the anger is directed, and you know, after this ruling, and before go through some of them, I mean, Les, what about you? Who are you most pissed off with today after all this has come out?
I think it is the Premier League, really. As I said, you know, you can't like discount Everton's place in all this because they ballsed up and they shouldn't be in this position. But I just think we've seen it down the years. You mentioned the Nias thing before. It always sticks in the mind, doesn't it? And it's always that thing that Everton are big enough to like cause a ripple, but not a tidal wave, I suppose. And it does seem quite tokenistic to just say, go ahead, slap it on these. There'll be a bit of a Ferrari, but not much. It won't cause too much trouble for us. So I think it's the Premier League because the whole, and as Matt's been saying as well, you know, the club have acted in good faith with the Premier League for 2 years now. They've, you know, given them accounts, been dead transparent. The thing he did, the stadium was a thing I never factored in before. I completely forgot about that somehow. But, you know, you can't even factor in the fact that interest rates have shot up. There's a lot of external factors that have gone on to, you know, cause the club to pay out more money than they otherwise would have. Even in the first instance, we were working in a massively inflated transfer market that the arse fell out of it completely when COVID hit. You know, I'm not saying Michael Keane would have gone on to be £100 million player, but Michael Keane would have been sold for £100 million had COVID not hit. But no, seriously, you know, there's things like we overpaid for Keane, we overpaid for Sigurdsson. We may have been able to recoup some money back on them at some point, but you know, various factors didn't help in that. We couldn't sell them. There's been a lot of mitigating factors, and as Matt said, they don't seem to have been taken into consideration too seriously. And it's just been like, as Matt said, shit happens, lads. And that's the infuriating thing for me.
Yeah, that's like where I feel it's leaves a bit of a sour taste. Like you know, like Les said there, and like Matt said, like it feels like Everton have gone above and beyond to work with the Premier League here. It's not been a, you know, maybe they've recognised that they've made a mistake. I don't know. And they thought that, you know, we're going to do everything we possibly can here to try and rectify this. And you know, like the lads have both said, they may as well not have bothered. And for them to, I mean, like, is this the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the Premier League? Like really? I think in the report it said Everton had gone over by 20 million, wasn't it? And you know, listen, you know, that if from now on, whenever a team goes over by that much in FFP, they get this level of sanction, then do you know what? Sound. Yeah. Like, you know, if there's a precedent set for this. If Man City gets sent back to Heaton Park to play their games for the next few years after all their charges come out, then absolutely fine. But it feels like there's some bad faith gone on here, whether Everton have, you know, made a mistake or not.
Well, do you know? See, this is where I slightly disagree. Well, I don't know, disagree with Les quite a bit here, in that all of this goes towards the Premier League. Yeah, I mean, we've discussed that mostly in this pod about, you know, how unfair it seems, and you know, Celtic City we've spoken about there with the financial issues they've got, and it looks as if they've got away with things. That remains to be seen, of course, but I don't know, the Toffees come home to roost, didn't he? Ever since we got, and we've spoken about this a long time, ever since Moshiri came in and owned the football club, what are we now, 7 years later? You think, and just going back to what Les referred to there, you think about the players and what we've done with the finances that we got from Moshiri, regardless of whether it was legal or not, and regardless to the level that it's ultimately ended up at. So we've got the deduction we've got. That the players we've bought has just been, it's staggering if you go through the list of what we've bought and what we've wasted and what we've not been able to claim back from getting rid of these players. In this entirety of what Everton have been punished here, the amount is something yet to be discussed and argued. But what can't be, you know, thrown out of hand is how Everton have operated as a club to not receive some sort of punish. Now, people will be screaming at me when they listen to this. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right there, Dave, and it's why we're in financial shite when it comes to buying players and what we need to do for Moshiri Go and 777, MSP, all that stuff. But when you reach this point where you get to a punishment where we're at, could Everton have avoided this? Well, absolutely, they could have. You've got an accountant in as a billionaire owner. You're telling me that can't be rectified, or what potentially is down the line that he thinks, yeah, we can't go and get that player. I can't listen to various people who've come up to him to talk about his train set and say, well, I don't have to necessarily go and listen to somebody wanting 30 million for Michael Keane back in the day and all the nonsense we've spent money on. You know, that can't be taken away from the fact that there's been a line of things that have happened for us to get to this situation. So Everton cannot be blamed. I'm not, and this is me not saying that the decision is right. I'm just saying that Everton are involved in this. It's not just, well, everyone hates Everton and that's why they're doing it, or, you know, Everton are going to be really easy to do this too, so we can start saying that to various other clubs and getting everything in control financially within teams in the Premier League. I don't buy that. Everton have been involved in this, and whether we want to sit here and say, well, you know, who's more, like you question, Matt, who do you blame the most? How much do you blame Everton? I'd put Everton equally along with what's gone on to happen, because Everton have started it. So, you know, you can't carry on to just say it's somebody else's. Yes, it may be unfair, but it wouldn't happen at all if Everton didn't do what has ended up being what we're getting punished for.
There we go. Seismic news today, so seismic that it has brought an end to a Blue Room hiatus that I always knew was going to end before the end of the new year. I always said he'd be back on before Christmas.
Mate,
and here he is.
Yeah.
Couldn't resist. It's Rob Vera. Rob.
Oh no, he's back. He was talking to me about this the other day. And I know we were talking about post-match last week, and he asked me who was on it. And I said, oh, it was just me and Peter, it was just me and Les. And you could tell, he didn't write anything. You could just tell that there was a twinkle in his eye, thinking,
and it's
I should have been the third person on that.
Rob, how are you?
I got something to say.
Yes. That's the start of the podcast. That's the name of the podcast.
How is Yerry Mina not the starting center? I've run out of fucking patience at this point for this, and I just finally had to say something. So
I mean, let's get straight into it, mate. How are you feeling waking up and seeing that news today?
Well, I mean, like, it is a weird combination. First of all, hello everyone. It's good to. It's nice to say hello. I thought I'd take.
Rob, new listeners won't know who you are.
Yeah, I'm. That's right. I'm American guy from Blue Room past. Look, I'm kind of seething. It's a weird combination, Matt, because I feel, on the one hand, I have spent, I mean, how many times, guys, have we been on the Blue Room over the years? And I have said, and I've said so many times, like, how is it that a league that calls itself the greatest league in the world, the best league in the world, can operate in this manner where there is such rapid inequity in regards to how the rules are applied, and I don't even the financial rules, the refereeing, all of it, and we just all kind of shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's just kind of the way it's always been. And I've always kind of felt like a little bit crazy and felt like I was tearing my hair out, but insert your own joke here. But I've always felt like, look, this is not sustainable forever for just a handful of leagues to not only kind of, control everything, but to escape punishment for everything, to win everything. Like, at what point is enough for the handful of clubs in this league that have everything? They get the benefit of every decision, regulatory or otherwise. And now for Everton, who, look, let's not pretend that Everton is blameless in all of this. Everton's rampant mismanagement over the years led to a lot of issues. But I would also say the last few years at Everton are, compared to the scale of absolute corruption of some of the sides in this league that have won title after title or have been able to just continuously rack up debt year over year, and we just kind of shrug our shoulders and say, well, yeah, but their shirt is sponsored by Chevrolet, so don't worry about it. That's what's fair. It's fair as long as you find a way to get enough money from the outside and get enough money from outside sources that are okay with us. Or, if a brutal human rights violating regime takes you over, that's okay. Okay. But for Everton to be told by the Premier League, hey, we're going to sit in for, the better part of 12 to 18 months with you and scrutinize every financial decision you make, every transfer, scrutinize everything down to the penny, pretty much compel you to sell Richarlison and quote, balance the books. And for them to do that and sit with us and do that and then still say that wasn't enough. And not only that it wasn't enough, but that the remedy for it is, it might not be a bullet right to the brain, but it's a bullet right into the lung. And this is meant to relegate us. And we just might avoid it, given that this came down in the first third of the season, as opposed to later in the season. Maybe there's a way out of it. But guys, the tacit acceptance of I would say fans of this sport in general, this league in general, and English fans, whatever, it's all of us. We're all guilty to some degree. When the Super League the Super League coup basically kind of fell apart because essentially because they mismanaged the PR around it and just, went about it in a completely haphazard way. They basically decided that, well, we're going to quote punish ourselves with some fines, right? They literally went behind the backs of their business partners and planned to destroy the business entity that billions and billions of pounds were invested in. And all they ended up doing was what? Finding themselves. And when I say themselves, it's because who runs the Premier League? We know who runs the Premier League. It's a handful of clubs. They make the decisions on, it's like that scene in Goodfellas where, where Henry Hill gets in talks about how no one goes to jail unless they want to go to jail. And then when he finally does have to go to jail, he gets in the limo and says, driver, take me to jail. That's about the way it works in this league. So what ended up happening was everyone was so upset. Our fans, fans of the sport in general, protested and were so upset, I think, for at least a full 3 days of real outrage before we all just kind of moved on with our lives. And until there is, and maybe this is what it takes, guys, because until there is a sustained protest, outrage, demand for change, maybe it's the other 12 clubs that are in the same boat as us in the Premier League, who are essentially treated as disposable make weights in this thing. Now that they see that this can happen to them, are there more unified voices on this front? But ultimately, we have kind of tacitly accepted that we play in a league that, well, the rules only apply to some, but hey, that's just the way it is. Well, that's just the way it is literally the worst justification for pretty much anything you can think of in any facet of our society. And now, today, we are seeing a true confirmation of what we've always suspected the quote Premier League feels about Everton and about clubs like us. And that is that we are there to, fill out a competition. We are there to be made an example of. And that is the purpose that we ultimately serve to them. And if we are this disposable, then any of these other clubs outside of, the aforementioned 7 need to wake up to that reality. And so I'm livid because now I don't even feel like I don't even want to talk about decision making around Dyche and making subs, and did he luck his way into Branthwaite, or did now none of that matters. Now it is all about everyone getting behind this club and this team, and doing so with a righteous indignation that you have never felt before. And that's the only way forward. I'm mad. I'm pissed. I think that this whole thing is corrupt. And yet we are about to embark on several months of, hell or high water effort to try to stay in this terrible, corrupt league. And that, my friends, is why being a fan of Everton is truly the weirdest, most surreal experience there is.
Just to touch on something you said there, Rob, there's never going to be collective action in football. It's very rare, purely because the tribalism trumps everything.
Yeah, I know.
Bad. As you said about those other clubs, while this isn't affecting them, no one cares. If this was West Ham, we'd be like, well, yeah, that's a bit harsh. That'd be it.
Matt, Les, I just think I've just done exactly what you said there. I think, what I've just said. Well, the club's also to blame as much as the Premier League is. I'll be getting messages and tweets and DMs all night long, people saying, "What the fuck are you talking about, Dave? It's everything's wrong with the Premier League. They're all cop-outs and all this." My point, though, is exactly what you're saying. There'll be a load of people who agree with what I've said. The majority won't, and say it's purely the Premier League. That's exactly what you're talking about there, and the exact reason why you won't get a level of harmony for a high proportion of clubs. Fans won't all agree with themselves.
But Dave, here's the thing: how many other clubs in this league are financially mismanaged? Like, I don't understand how such a rich league can be full of clubs that are in massive amounts of debt. The difference, though, is it's not that we aren't to blame. We are to blame for our mismanagement. And, the punishment for Everton's mismanagement has been the product on the pitch that we have had to endure for the last half a decade. Okay. To me, what is criminal about this is the punishment from the Premier League, an unprecedented punishment for something that is a fraction of what Manchester City and other clubs have just flaunted right out in the open. I mean, there's this theory over here about, like, why does Trump get away with it? It's because he does it right out in the open and just says he's doing it. And it's the same thing. It's like these clubs do it and they say, well, we're just going to appeal. We're going to get our lawyers and we're going to appeal this into oblivion. And maybe we can appeal this and prolong this for as long as possible. But the underlying issue here is not that we are blameless here. We are not blameless in terms of the activity and some of the things, but does the punishment fit the crime? And is the punishment equally applied to a group of allegedly equal partners in a 20-club league? The answer is unequivocally no. And that is the problem.
Yeah, totally agree. And like I said, is this the worst thing that's ever happened since the Premier League started? Because it's been, it's ended up with the worst punishments that we've had.
Tell it in May, Matt.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm feeling upbeat after Rob's speech there. Hell hath no fury, like a Vera scorn. So
that's all going to be decent now, do you know?
Rob's going to be over on the next flight that United game with his fuck FFP, fuck the Premier League banner, storming the pitch, no doubt as well.
I've got a banner that is already in production right now. I'm going to bring it over.
We are going to wrap it up here. Rob, now you're back on again. Is that the hiatus over, or are you going back into?
No, this is one. I can't. Surely I can't. I don't know. Don't ask me right now. I am in a Ron Burgundy glass case of emotions right now. I don't even want to think about it. I literally just have been working to try to launch my own podcast this week, and now I'm just
that's why he's come on. Do you want to give it a plug? Go on. Is that the real reason you're here?
Well, now that you mention it, Matt, no.
You really do need to tell everybody what it is, because also it'll make them feel a lot better than what we've all just received. We've all received this news.
If you, for whatever reason care to listen to my voice not talking about Everton or the rampant inequity of being Everton in the Premier League in 2023, then please listen to my new podcast, Turn of the Century, which is, of course, the new iteration of my longtime running FM radio show, music show. Now it's just one big podcast talking about the 80s, 90s, 2000s, music, movies, television, and whatever the hell we feel like talking about. First episode's out, and yeah, I feel dirty even plugging that right now, guys, because look, I don't want to take away from what is most important, and what is most important, guys, is that today we get to be angry, and I have zero sense of what appeals logistically mean in terms of putting this off, but I will say this, you know, I have felt disillusioned. Part of the reason for my hiatus is just because I needed a break. I felt disillusioned by Everton, etc. You know, by a series of managers and players and whatever. But I will say that, you know, for the first time in a long time, I at least have this little flicker of faith in what this group seems to slowly be doing. I'm not quite as there as others are about how this is a rousing success, but I will say this. All the stuff, all the crap we argue about in regards to you know, decisions, style, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's all there. And I look forward to a day when we can get back to just talking about those things. But for now, 10 points is close to a death blow, but I do think there's enough of the season left. I do think that this side has appears to have a ton of resolve in them. And so now it's just about us getting behind this thing in a way that we never have before. And if any group of fans understands what that takes, given the last couple of years with the relegation threats, I feel like it's got to be us. So yes, Rob, Vera, you're one of the biggest Everton skeptics, and you know, at times, like, as we know, I talk about how I hate Everton so much that's how you know I love them. I'm fully on board. I'm fully behind Sean Dyche and the boys to get this figured out, and that's just where we're at right now. But guys, this kind of league, the way this league is constituted, it just cannot stay this way. It cannot. To what end? We stay in the league, and then what? Like, to what end? Something has to change. And Les, you're right. Like, I know that everyone is kind of in their own little tribal fan bases, but we have to look at the bigger picture of this today and say that something is really wrong. And if we don't fix it, it's just going to be even worse than it is now. And so, yeah, guys, thanks for letting me jump on. Really appreciate it.
No, great to have Rob on. And like Keith said earlier, we could be out of the relegation zone as early as next weekend if results go for us. So let's see. Cheers to Les, cheers to Dave, cheers to Keith and Matt for coming on earlier as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, press subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, let us know what you think. If you're listening to us, subscribe, leave a review. All those things help. I hope you've enjoyed that. Not much financial deep dive analysis, but it is still very raw. We are still processing it. There'll be more on the bloom over the coming days that go into this in a bit more detail. But really appreciate everybody listening. Keep the faith, up the toffees, and we'll speak to you again very soon.